This is Patricia Hazell, and I'm welcoming you to Patricia's Potpourri. And as you may not know, this episode and all past episodes and all future episodes will be on YouTube. And I would love for you to please sign in, subscribe, and be my guest. Well, today I have a wonderful guest, and he is going to introduce himself. He is
Vincent Gaglione, and you can call me Vinny. Patricia and I worked, Patricia, forgive me, and I worked in the New York City school system, so we know each other from that venue, and we've always had good rapport and good fun.
I remember going to Vinny's retirement party, and that was really great. And we got a fabulous picture of Vinny to take home with us. Could you tell us a little bit about that picture, Vinny?
Well, that picture, someone asked me for an old school picture, and I didn't know why, and I gave it to them, and that wasn't really it really wasn't a retirement party, because I had said that I didn't want a retirement party when I left the UFT. But the Italian-American Committee decided that they should honor me, and they sort of posed it as, hey, listen, Vinny has left, let's do a party for him. So somebody on the committee, and I think it was Patricia Filomena, got hold of that picture and then reproduced it and put one on every table in the room. And that picture was of me probably from when I was teaching maybe 5 or 6 years. I taught down at PS 192 in Manhattan, located between 136th and 138th Street, between Amsterdam Avenue and Broadway, just around the corner from where I grew up and was raised. And so the best part of the picture is what's not in the picture you see today, because the picture had lots of hair and a suit.
You know, I likened your hair. I compared it to Art Garfunkel. You know, it was really, really.
Well, those days, as you can see, are long over.
So what have you been doing since then?
Well, it's interesting. We were talking a little bit earlier before the show about a friend of yours who said to you, when you retire, you need to have something that you're going to do. When I retired, I was telling my friends that I was going to do a movie, a show, and a museum every week. So now,
Because you're doing a show right now. Okay.
So go to a show, exactly. Ask me, did I do that? Absolutely not. Somehow, when you retire, even though you have big plans, first of all, that first year, you just relish being free and getting done all the little things that you could never get done when you were working. So I started a project taking old photographs, scanning them into the computer, and creating a collection of my photographs digitally.
Now I know that you are going to send the photograph in which I'm referring. Would you please send one to my director so we can, so they can see what we're talking about?
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Because I have it sitting on a shelf above my computer.
Excellent.
I did that for a while, and then I just was doing stuff around the house, things that never got done. I still say to myself, when did I find the time to do all the things that I'm currently doing? And I would presume that you have that same experience. I stayed connected to the UFT. I've been active in the retiree chapter. And I would hope that every retiree from the school system, from the UFT, would stay active in the retiree chapter. We have meetings almost monthly, except in the middle of the winter, and of course not during the summer. I serve now on the executive board of the retiree chapter.
Could you explain what that means, please?
Well, there are a lot of issues that we as retirees need to deal with. One of the biggest issues that we need to deal with is supporting our in-service colleagues. The people in the school system right now need the kind of political support that we as retirees can provide. So, for example, when the union has legislative issues that deal with the school system, we're the ones who are available to go to Albany to lobby, to go down to DC to lobby, to write our legislators, to talk to our friends, and to give them the kind of support on legislation that they need for themselves and their jobs. But there are tons of issues that affect us as seniors. I mean, not to drag current politics into this conversation, but the latest budget that was proposed by Speaker Paul Ryan has in it cuts to Medicare, cuts to Medicaid, proposals to cut portions of Social Security. These are issues that affect us because we're entitled to these particular programs.
You know, we worked all our lives to get to this point. First of all, I remember never having to go to a doctor in years. But now, I'm a regular, okay? There are different types of things that we should do for ourselves before time, types of medical needs that we have now that we need to check us ourselves, different kinds of checkups that we did not need before, we need now. So that's why Medicare is so important right at this time. And the cost of a doctor, it could be astronomical if you don't have some kind of supplementary insurance.
That's very true. This is a subject that's dear to my heart, and that's the issue of Medicaid. A lot of people are under the impression that Medicaid is only for the poor, that Medicaid does not affect middle-class persons like ourselves. But that's not true.
I need to understand that because I was under that false assumption.
Okay. We have Medicare, but Medicare doesn't pay all of the bills.
I know. I got a big bill where I had this. I was in an accident,
Right.
so I had to.
And so we have supplemental insurance that helps to pick up some of what Medicare doesn't cover. But I want to go to a subject like therapy. Medicare has limits on the amount of therapy that you can have for certain conditions. What happens when the therapy ends and you need more of it? Well, some doctors will say, well, let's write another prescription and see if we can get it through Medicare. Sometimes that doesn't work. And what happens then? What happens then is if you still need more therapy, you wind up having to essentially go on Medicaid to help pick up those expenses. And to go on Medicaid, what do you need to do? You need to empty yourself of your assets because you can't get Medicaid unless you're diminished in income.
So that means you worked all your life to have this little nest egg put away, and therefore it can all be absorbed in medical bills?
Precisely. Precisely. I have a friend whose husband became severely ill, required long-term care and treatment, used up all of the Medicare benefits, and had to go on Medicaid. And because of it, had to use up that nest egg that you talked about, and is currently on Medicaid because of it. So when, legislators like Paul Ryan say, oh, come on, we can make a cut here and a cut there, and some people are abusing it, that's not necessarily the case. And I don't want to be the victim of somebody trying to save the government money because they think I'm expendable.
You know what? He better stay young and healthy forever.
Well,
and you know what? No, you never know what life is going to bring you.
That's right. We can leave here now, walk out onto the street, and get hit by a car. And depending on how severe the accident is, it can leave you disabled and poor for the rest of your life.
Wow. Ridiculous.
Yep.
Ridiculous. So how can we protect ourselves? What can we do?
I go back to what the original point of my conversation was. You and I have that avenue. We're members of a union. Our union is very active. We keep in touch with our members. We tell them, write letters to your legislators. We go do lobbying. You lobbied many times when you were a union activist. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we can do. But for the public that doesn't have a union, there are neighborhood associations. There are community groups. There are churches. There are synagogues. There are mosques. There are all kinds of religious institutions where people form themselves into groups to reach out to push for the issues that they care about.
And I think that these people should contact their elected officials and ask and tell them of the desired legislation and the push that's needed.
There's a rule of thumb that legislators use. And I don't know if they still use it because now that we have emails, it has changed things. But the rule of thumb was, for every letter they received on an issue, there had to have been at least 10 other people who felt the same way. Now we have emails, so it's easy to just get on the website of a legislator and to type in whatever you want to say about whatever legislation or concerns that you have. And I agree with you. That is one of the things we should be doing once a month. We should let no legislator get away with thinking that they can do things without our input into it.
You know, I would like to talk to you about elections, because some people don't vote. Some people only vote in certain elections. And I would like to stress the importance of voting in local elections. It's so important. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with you. And it starts, as you keep pointing out, at the lowest possible level. It starts with here in New York City, with your city councilman. It starts with your state assemblyman. It starts with your state senator. It's not just about the mayor. It's not just about the governor. It's not just about the president. It's about your congressional representative, about your senator from the state, etc. And if you don't get interested in those elections, then what you are doing is giving to other people the power to decide what those people are doing. The small election that you're talking about, a primary election is an election which usually determines, in many places, who is going to be elected. We happen to live in a city, New York City, which largely elects Democratic candidates. So, if there is a primary election between two Democrats, the outcome means that whoever wins the primary will probably go on to win the general election. So a lot of people do not vote in primary elections. Those primary elections are equally as important as the general elections. And not to drag in the national scene at all, but a good example of that is something that just happened in Alabama.
Tell us about it. Give us a
Well,
story.
in Alabama, the Senator Jeff Sessions was appointed by the president to the Department of Justice. And so the seat was vacant, an election was called, and so the Republicans had a primary election, and there were two candidates. There was the candidate who had been selected to sit in the Senate seat on an interim basis. His name was Luther Strange. And the other candidate, whose last name is Moore, I can't remember his first name, had been a judge, removed twice because he refused to follow a court injunction or a court mandate. The Republican Party, as a group, was supporting the first candidate, Strange, but the candidate who won the primary was Judge Moore, and he now will be running in the general election as the Republican candidate for senator from the state of Alabama. And since Alabama happens to be a Republican state, the likelihood is that he will be elected. So there's an example of where a primary election has determined what the outcome of the general election will be.
Wow. Important to get out there and vote.
Everybody needs to get out and vote. Everybody. And whether, here in New York State, the polls are usually opened from 6 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. So there are few of us who work such hours that we can't vote. And whether you go early in the morning or after work, it's important to do that.
And as you had spoke about previously, if you find it impossible, get an absentee ballot.
Exactly. Absentee ballots are available from your local county election board. Here in New York City, there is an election board for each of the counties. A lot of people don't realize this, but Bronx County is Bronx County. But Manhattan is really called New York County. Brooklyn is really called Kings County. Staten Island is really called Richmond County. And Queens is called Queens County.
Well, you know, it surprises me for people of color who do not go out and vote. And they do not realize how people risked their lives, lost their lives, jeopardized the safety of their family about voting. And when you have the opportunity, please go out and vote.
It just doesn't apply to people of color. It applies to everyone. Everybody should value the precious right to vote.
Very good, because you know what? I know me, social studies teachers. In countries, people are not allowed to vote. Or I remember where there's only one candidate. One candidate. And
This is a nation that claims it's democratic. This is a nation that claims the voice of the people is important. And yet this is a nation where in many elections, less than 35% of the people who are eligible to vote go out and vote.
wait, I'm a math person also. So you're saying that about 1/3 of the people who are eligible?
Absolutely. In many elections, that's the case.
That means anybody can stack the deck by getting their people to get to the polls.
Precisely. Precisely. And that is a danger when citizens give up their right to vote by being lazy or saying, well, I can't do it today because I have other more important things to do.
But that is the most important thing.
Precisely.
A right, it's a right. We talked about privileges and rights at one time, and you have a right.
I think, you were a social studies teacher, okay? This is a nation that started, if you think about it, with enfranchising only one group of people. They were white men who owned property. Those were the only people who started off being able to vote. And then over time, through a lot of hard politics, eventually a whole lot of other people got to vote. And women have only had the vote since the early 1900s.
Yeah, man.
So how is it that things that were fought so hard for are just dismissed as just another chore in our lives? They're not a chore. They're what you said. They're a right and they're a responsibility.
And a privilege.
And a privilege indeed. As you said, there are many countries in this world where people do not have the vote.
Yeah, well, they know what a dictatorship is.
Right. Very true.
The right to vote. So everyone should get out there for each election, no matter how large, no matter what or how small. Okay, we should write to our local officials, let them know about what we think, and make sure that we participate in the system. Volunteer. There's different ways of volunteer. You don't have to be out there walking or stuff. There's
right.
many ways to be a part of the system.
You live in a building. You can put a flyer under every door in the building. That's activism. That's important. You and I were teachers. I think one of the saddest things that we can say as teachers is that somehow, and I don't think it's our fault because I think we did it in the classrooms. We used to have elections in the classroom for the class president and the class treasurer. Somehow, we just didn't persuade enough of our students of the importance to vote.
You know, it's because we didn't have a unified system in that particular school. I remember when the new voting booths first came down to the school in which I worked at one time. Mm-hmm. That was a class trip to go down and see the new voting booths. You know?
That's terrific, to be quite honest with you, because the truth is, in some places, I shouldn't say this, but the administration wouldn't want you to take the kids out of the classroom to do something like that.
Okay, no, absolutely. And to have a class election, this is the practice for where kids can learn about propaganda.
Right.
I remember in one school, or it wasn't where I was, but there was a kid that was giving out candy for a vote, you know?
Where have we heard that before?
I got to tell you, it's time to go again.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
I know. Would you please
Patricia, thank you very much.
Would you
This is
please
fun.
come on? Would you please come on?
Absolutely.
May we please have some more of your time? And you know what you're doing? You're informing the public about so many important things. You know, so would you please tell your friends about these informative sessions in which they may get on YouTube, so they can learn more about what's going on in their community and things that affect their lives. And the Medicare, I really thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
It's been an absolutely
It's been fun.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
So you're coming soon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
like Hunter said, tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.